Karen warned me to keep my daughter away from the school playground. I thought she was just another power-hungry HOA president making empty threats. I was wrong. The gunshot that evening didn't just shatter my 9-year-old's lung, it unleashed a mother's fury that would destroy Karen's perfect life completely. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe for more stories. It all started when we moved to Willow Creek 6 months ago. I thought it would be perfect for my daughter Lily and me. The houses were nice, the streets were clean, and there was a beautiful playground at the elementary school just 2 blocks away. As a single mom working 2 jobs, I needed a safe place where Lily could play while I caught my breath. I should have known trouble was coming when I first met Karen Williams, the HOA president. She knocked on our door 3 days after we moved in, carrying a thick folder of rules and regulations. Karen was tall and thin, with perfectly styled blonde hair and cold blue eyes that seemed to judge everything they saw. She wore expensive clothes and always looked like she was ready for a photo shoot. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, but her smile never reached her eyes. "I need to go over some important community guidelines with you." For the next hour she explained every single rule in the HOA handbook. No parking on the street after 10 p.m. No decorations without approval. Grass must be cut every week. No loud music ever. The list went on and on. When she got to the playground rules, her voice became especially stern. "The school playground is technically HOA property after school hours," she said. "We don't allow unsupervised children there after 6 p.m. It's for safety reasons." I nodded politely, but inside I was annoyed. Lily was 9 years old and well-behaved. The playground was 2 blocks away and I could see it from our backyard. What harm could there be in letting her play there in the evening when it was cooler? Over the next few months, Karen made our lives difficult. Every week there was a new complaint. My grass was half an inch too long. Lily's bike was parked in the wrong spot. Our Halloween decorations were up 1 day past the deadline. Each violation came with a fine ranging from $50 to $200. The worst part was how she watched us. I would see her peering through her window, taking photos of our house with her phone. Sometimes she would drive slowly past our home multiple times a day, looking for something to complain about. Other neighbors told me she did this to everyone, but we seemed to be her favorite target. "She's just power-hungry," said Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived next door. "Don't let her get to you." Most of us ignore her. But ignoring Karen became impossible when she started focusing on Lily. She would follow my daughter around the neighborhood, telling her to walk on the sidewalk properly or to keep her voice down. Once, she called the police because Lily was riding her scooter too fast down the street. The breaking point came when Karen started sending me daily emails about the playground. She had somehow found out that Lily and I went there most evenings after dinner. It was our special time together. She would play while I sat on the bench and we would talk about her day at school. "Mrs. Carter," her first email read, "I have observed your daughter using the school playground after authorized hours. This is a violation of HOA regulations and poses serious safety and liability concerns. Please ensure this behavior stops immediately." I replied politely, explaining that the playground was public property and that we weren't bothering anyone. Her response came within an hour, much longer and more aggressive. "The playground becomes HOA jurisdiction after 6 p.m. as stated in our community charter. Your daughter is trespassing and you are enabling this behavior. Legal action will be taken if this continues." The emails kept coming, sometimes 3 or 4 a day. Karen's language became more threatening each time. She started calling Lily, that delinquent child, and me, an irresponsible parent who refuses to follow basic rules. 3 weeks before the shooting, Karen's behavior became truly frightening. She started showing up at the playground while we were there, standing at the fence and staring at us. She would take photos and videos, muttering under her breath about documentation and evidence. One evening she brought her husband Greg with her. Greg seemed uncomfortable, constantly telling Karen they should go home. But Karen was determined to make her point. She marched right up to me while Lily was on the swings. "This ends now," she said, her face red with anger. "I'm giving you one final warning. Keep that child away from this playground, or there will be consequences." "What kind of consequences?" I asked, standing up from the bench. Karen's eyes narrowed. "The kind that teach people to respect authority and follow rules." That night I couldn't sleep. Something about the way Karen looked at Lily made my skin crawl. The next morning I called the police non-emergency line to report harassment. Officer Martinez took my statement and said they would talk to Karen, but there wasn't much they could do unless she actually threatened us directly. "Keep documenting everything," he advised. "Save those emails and take photos if she continues to bother you. 2 days later, Karen sent an email that made my blood run cold. Some people only learn lessons the hard way. Your daughter is becoming a problem that needs to be solved. I forwarded it to Officer Martinez immediately, but he said it still wasn't specific enough to be considered a direct threat. I was getting desperate. Other neighbors started avoiding us because they didn't want to get involved in Karen's drama. Even Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been supportive before, seemed nervous when I tried to talk to her about it. On that terrible evening, I almost didn't go to the playground. Lily had been cranky all day, complaining about homework and fighting with me about cleaning her room. But she had been looking forward to playing outside all week because of the rain, so I decided we both needed some fresh air. The playground was empty when we arrived at 7 p.m. Lily ran straight to her favorite swing, the one with the blue seat that squeaked just right. I sat on our usual bench and pulled out my phone to check work emails. Everything felt normal, peaceful even. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Lily moved from the swings to the slide, climbing up the ladder with the confidence of a child who had done it 1,000 times. She was wearing her favorite pink sneakers, the ones with sparkles that caught the light when she moved. Her hair was in 2 messy braids because she had insisted on doing them herself that morning. "Mommy, watch this," she called out, preparing to go down the slide backwards, which was her new favorite trick. That's when I saw Karen walking across the playground toward us. But this time was different. She wasn't carrying her usual folder of complaints or her phone for taking pictures. Her right hand was inside her purse, and her face looked strange, twisted with an emotion I couldn't identify. "You were warned," she said, her voice shaking. "You were told to stay away from here." I stood up from the bench, suddenly feeling very afraid. "Karen, please. We're not hurting anyone. Lily is just playing. She's trespassing." Karen screamed, pulling her hand out of her purse. The gun looked huge in her grip, black and terrifying. "You both are. I told you there would be consequences." Everything happened so fast after that. I started running toward Lily, shouting her name. Lily looked confused, still sitting at the top of the slide. Karen raised the gun, her hands shaking but her aim steady. "No!" I screamed, but I was too far away. The gunshot was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It echoed across the empty playground and seemed to go on forever. Lily made a small, surprised sound and then tumbled down the slide, her small body landing in a heap at the bottom. I don't remember much about the next few minutes. I know I ran to Lily and gathered her in my arms. Her eyes were open but unfocused, and there was blood spreading across her pink t-shirt. She tried to say something but only a whisper came out. "It's okay, baby," I kept saying even though nothing was okay. "Mommy's here. You're going to be fine." Behind me, Karen was still holding the gun, but now she looked shocked by what she had done. "She shouldn't have been here," she kept repeating. "This is all your fault. She shouldn't have been here." Someone must have called 911 because suddenly there were sirens everywhere. Paramedics pushed me aside and started working on Lily, using words I didn't understand. Police officers surrounded Karen, shouting at her to drop the weapon. She was trespassing. Karen screamed as they handcuffed her. I was protecting my community. You'll see, I was protecting everyone. The ambulance ride to the hospital was a blur of flashing lights and medical equipment. I held Lily's hand while the paramedics worked on her, talking constantly to keep her conscious. Her eyes kept closing, and each time I thought I was losing her. At the hospital, they took Lily straight into surgery. Dr. Peterson, the surgeon, explained that the bullet had punctured her lung and that they needed to operate immediately to stop the internal bleeding. I signed papers with shaking hands, barely understanding what I was agreeing to. Then came the waiting. I sat in a plastic chair in the surgical waiting room, still wearing clothes stained with my daughter's blood. Other families came and went, but I couldn't move. Every time a doctor walked through the doors, my heart stopped, waiting to hear if my little girl was going to live or die. After 6 hours, Dr. Peterson finally came out to talk to me. Lily was alive, but barely. The surgery had been successful, but she was in critical condition. She was in a coma, and they didn't know when or if she would wake up. Seeing her in the ICU broke something inside me. She looked so small surrounded by all those machines, with tubes going into her arms and a ventilator helping her breathe. Her face was pale, and her beautiful sparkly shoes had been replaced with hospital socks. That's when the anger really hit me. Not just anger, rage. Pure, burning fury at Karen Williams and what she had done to my innocent child. As I sat beside Lily's bed that first night, listening to the beeping machines, I made a decision. Karen was going to pay for this, and not just through the legal system. The next morning, Detective Harris came to interview me. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes who seemed genuinely upset about what had happened to Lily. He took detailed notes as I told him everything, about Karen's harassment, her threatening emails, and the shooting. She's been charged with attempted murder, he told me. But her lawyer is already claiming self-defense. She's saying Lily was a threat to community safety. I laughed bitterly. A 9-year-old girl on a playground was a threat? I know how it sounds, Detective Harris said. But we need solid evidence to make sure she doesn't walk away from this. Did anyone else witness the shooting? That's when I remembered Mrs. Patel, the elderly widow who lived in the house directly across from the playground. She was always at her window watching the neighborhood activities. If anyone had seen what really happened, it would be her. But first, I had my own investigating to do. While Lily lay unconscious in her hospital bed, I started digging into Karen's life. I was going to find every secret, every weakness, every way to destroy her just like she had destroyed my family. Mrs. Patel was terrified when I knocked on her door. She was a small, frail woman in her 70s who lived alone with her 3 cats. Her hands shook as she let me into her living room, which had a perfect view of the playground. I saw everything, she whispered, glancing nervously toward Karen's house. That woman just shot your poor baby for no reason. The little girl wasn't doing anything wrong. Why didn't you call the police? I asked. Mrs. Patel's eyes filled with tears. I'm scared of Karen. She's been trying to get me kicked out of my house for years. She says I don't maintain my property properly, that I'm bringing down property values. She told me if I ever caused trouble for her, she would make sure I lost everything. I spent an hour convincing Mrs. Patel to talk to Detective Harris. She finally agreed, but only if they could protect her identity somehow. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Next, I started talking to other neighbors, carefully, quietly, pretending I just needed support during this difficult time. What I discovered was that Karen had been terrorizing the entire neighborhood for years. She had gotten families evicted, had pets taken away by animal control, and had even gotten people fired from their jobs by calling their employers with false complaints. The Martinez family had been forced to sell their house after Karen reported them to immigration, even though they were legal residents. The Johnsons' dog had been taken by animal control after. Karen claimed it was aggressive, even though it was actually just friendly and energetic. The elderly Mr. Chen had been fined so many times by the HOA that he could barely afford his medications. Everyone had a story about Karen, but everyone was also afraid of her. She had connections with city officials, new lawyers and judges, and seemed to have unlimited time and money to make people's lives miserable. But fear makes people sloppy, and Karen had made enemies. I started reaching out to her victims, not just in our neighborhood but in her previous communities. Karen and her husband Greg had lived in 3 different places over the past 10 years, and she had been forced out of HOA leadership positions twice before due to complaints about her behavior. The breakthrough came when I followed Greg to a bar downtown. Karen's husband was a quiet man who seemed to fade into the background whenever she was around. But when he was alone, drinking away his sorrows, he was much more talkative. I approached him carefully, pretending to recognize him from neighborhood meetings. After a few drinks, he started opening up about his marriage and how difficult Karen had become over the years. She's paranoid, he said, staring into his beer. Always thinks someone is out to get her. That's why she bought the gun. Said she needed protection from all the people who wanted to hurt her. I encouraged him to keep talking, buying him drinks and acting sympathetic. What he told me over the next 2 hours was shocking. Karen had been planning to deal with problematic neighbors for months. She had a notebook where she wrote down complaints about different families and brainstormed ways to get rid of them. She wrote pages about you and your daughter, Greg said, his words slurring slightly. Said the kid was a symbol of everything wrong with the neighborhood, and that someone needed to teach you people a lesson about respect. I was recording everything on my phone, hidden in my purse. Greg was too drunk to notice or care. He told me about Karen's other plans. She wanted to get 3 more families kicked out of the neighborhood, had been sabotaging yard maintenance for houses she didn't like, and had even been putting nails in the street to flatten tires. I tried to stop her, Greg said sadly. But she doesn't listen to anyone. She thinks she's saving the neighborhood, but she's destroying it. And now? He trailed off, staring at his hands. Now what? I prompted. Now she's gone too far. Shooting a child. Even if somehow she gets away with it legally, her life is over. Our life is over. When I got home that night, I listened to the recording over and over. It wasn't enough for court, conversations with a drunk person wouldn't be admissible as evidence. But it gave me valuable information about Karen's state of mind and her plans. The next day, I called Detective Harris and told him about Karen's notebook. They got a search warrant for her house and found exactly what Greg had described: pages and pages of complaints about neighbors, detailed plans for getting rid of undesirable families, and most importantly, several entries about Lily and me. One entry, dated just 3 days before the shooting, read, "The Carter situation has become critical. The child continues to violate playground rules despite multiple warnings. Drastic action may be necessary to restore order and respect in the community." It still wasn't a smoking gun, but combined with Mrs. Patel's eyewitness testimony, it was enough to seriously damage Karen's self-defense claim. While the legal case was building, I decided to wage a different kind of war against Karen. I started a quiet campaign to turn the community against her, using social media and local connections to spread the word about what she had really done. I created a Facebook page called Justice for Lily Carter, and posted photos of my daughter, her smiling face, her artwork from school, videos of her singing her favorite songs. I told our story simply and honestly, focusing on Lily's innocence and Karen's pattern of harassment. The response was overwhelming. Within a week, the page had thousands of followers from our town and beyond. People shared their own stories about dealing with bullying neighbors and HOA abuse. Local news stations picked up the story, and suddenly Karen's face was on television every night. But the real breakthrough came when I discovered that Karen had enemies in high places too. She had been so aggressive in her HOA leadership that she had alienated city council members, police officials, and even her own HOA board. People who had been afraid to speak out before were now willing to go on record about her behavior. The mayor himself gave a statement supporting our family and calling for accountability in community leadership. The police chief announced that they were reviewing all previous complaints involving Karen to see if there was a pattern of harassment. Most importantly, I started getting calls from Karen's former neighbors in other cities. They had seen the news coverage and wanted to share their experiences. I learned that Karen had been involved in 3 other serious incidents over the years. She had called Child Protective Services on families she didn't like, had gotten people arrested on false charges, and had even been suspected of poisoning someone's dog. None of these incidents had been proven in court, but the pattern was clear. Karen Williams was not just a difficult neighbor, she was dangerous. As the media attention grew, Karen's perfect life started falling apart. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted to remove her as president. The homeowners association itself was dissolved after multiple families threatened to sue over Karen's actions as their representative. Greg filed for divorce and moved out of their house. In the paperwork, which became public record, he detailed years of emotional abuse and controlling behavior. He also revealed that Karen had been forging his signature on HOA documents and had been using association funds for personal expenses. Karen's employer, a real estate company, fired her after clients started canceling their contracts. She had been using her position to target people she didn't like, steering buyers away from certain neighborhoods and spreading false information about properties. Even Karen's own family turned against her. Her sister gave an interview to the local newspaper describing Karen's lifelong pattern of bullying and control. She revealed that Karen had been kicked out of their parents' will after she tried to have their elderly father declared mentally incompetent so she could control his finances. Watching Karen's life implode felt good, but it wasn't enough. Every time I sat beside Lily's hospital bed, seeing her pale face and hearing the machines that were keeping her alive, my anger grew stronger. Karen had taken everything from us, and I wanted her to feel that same devastation. 4 months after the shooting, Karen's trial began. She had hired an expensive lawyer who tried to paint her as a concerned citizen who had been defending her community from dangerous elements. They portrayed Lily as a troublemaker and me as a negligent mother who had ignored multiple warnings about playground safety. But the evidence against Karen was overwhelming. Mrs. Patel's testimony was powerful. She described in detail how Karen had approached us with the gun already drawn, how she had shot Lily without any provocation, and how my daughter had just been playing normally on the slide. The prosecutor presented Karen's notebook, her threatening emails, and testimony from dozens of neighbors about her pattern of harassment and escalation. They showed that Karen had bought the gun specifically to deal with neighborhood problems, and had been planning some kind of confrontation for weeks. Greg's testimony was devastating. He confirmed that Karen had been obsessed with getting rid of our family, that she viewed Lily as a symbol of everything wrong with the neighborhood, and that she had been talking about taking direct action to solve the problem. The defense tried to argue that Karen had been mentally ill, that the stress of neighborhood management had driven her to a breakdown. But the prosecution showed that her actions were calculated and planned, not the result of a sudden mental health crisis. When I took the stand, I told Lily's story. I talked about her dreams of becoming an astronaut, her love of animals, her gentle nature with younger children. I described how Karen's harassment had terrorized us for months, and how the shooting had destroyed not just Lily's body but her spirit. My daughter may survive, I said, looking directly at Karen, but the little girl she was before you shot her is gone forever. You didn't just try to kill her body, you killed her innocence, her sense of safety, her ability to trust the world. Karen stared back at me with cold, empty eyes. Even during the trial, even facing decades in prison, she showed no remorse for what she had done. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. They found Karen guilty on all charges: attempted murder, aggravated assault, stalking, and several weapons charges. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole for the first 15 years. As they led Karen away in handcuffs, she finally broke her calm facade. "This is all wrong," she screamed. "I was protecting my community. That child was a menace. You'll all see what happens when people don't follow rules." Even in defeat, even facing decades behind bars, Karen couldn't admit that she had done anything wrong. She still believed that shooting a 9-year-old girl had been justified. The civil lawsuit against Karen and the HOA was settled out of court for $2.3 million. It wasn't about the money. No amount could give Lily back her health or her childhood. But it meant we could afford the best medical care, the best therapists, and a fresh start somewhere far away from Willow Creek. Lily woke up from her coma 2 weeks after the trial ended. The doctors called it a miracle, but I knew it was just my strong, stubborn daughter refusing to give up. Her first word was, "Mommy," and I cried harder than I had since the day she was shot. But recovery was slow and painful. The bullet had damaged Lily's lung permanently, meaning she would never be able to run or play sports the way she had dreamed of. She had nightmares every night, waking up screaming about the mean lady with the gun. Simple things like going to playgrounds or hearing loud noises would send her into panic attacks. We started therapy, both individual sessions for Lily and family counseling for both of us. Dr. Sarah Martinez, Lily's psychologist, explained that trauma changes the brain, especially in children. Lily would carry these scars for the rest of her life, even if she learned to manage them. "She's incredibly resilient," Dr. Martinez told me after one of Lily's sessions. "But she's also lost something that can never be fully restored: her basic sense that the world is a safe place." It broke my heart to watch my cheerful, trusting daughter become anxious and fearful. She jumped at unexpected sounds, refused to play outside alone, and had developed a stutter that hadn't been there before. The physical wounds were healing, but the emotional damage ran much deeper. 6 months after the trial, we moved to a small town 3 hours away. I had found a job at the local library, a quiet, peaceful place where I could keep an eye on Lily after school. We rented a small house with a big backyard, far from any HOA or community politics. Lily started at a new school where nobody knew our story. I had decided not to tell anyone about the shooting unless absolutely necessary. I wanted her to have a chance to just be a normal kid again, not the girl who got shot by her neighbor. Slowly, carefully, Lily began to heal. She made new friends, discovered a love of art therapy, and even started laughing again. Her dreams had changed. Instead of wanting to be an astronaut, she now wanted to help other children who had been hurt. Even at age 10, she was already showing a wisdom and compassion that broke my heart. But I never forgot what Karen had done to us. Even in our new life, even as Lily grew stronger, the anger never completely went away. Sometimes I would lie awake at night, thinking about Karen in her prison cell, wondering if she ever thought about the child she had tried to murder. 3 years after the shooting, I received a letter forwarded from our old address. It was from Karen, written from her prison cell in neat, careful handwriting. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Dear Mrs. Carter," it began, "I have found God in this place, and He has shown me the error of my ways. I realize now that I was wrong to shoot Lily, and I want to ask for your forgiveness. I have been attending Bible study and anger management classes, and I understand now that my actions were driven by pride and fear, not by righteousness as I believed at the time." The letter went on for 3 pages, full of religious language and claims of personal transformation. Karen wrote about how prison had humbled her, how she now understood the pain she had caused, and how she prayed for Lily's complete recovery every day. "I know I can never undo what I did," the letter concluded, "but I hope that someday you might find it in your heart to forgive me. I am not the same person who committed that terrible act, and I spend every day working to become worthy of redemption." I read the letter 3 times, feeling a mixture of rage and disgust. Even in her supposed repentance, Karen was still trying to manipulate and control the situation. She wanted forgiveness on her terms, absolution that would make her feel better about what she had done. That night, I sat in my kitchen with the letter in front of me, thinking about everything that had happened. I thought about Lily's nightmares, her damaged lung, her lost innocence. I thought about the dreams she would never pursue, the simple childhood joy that Karen had stolen from her. Then I walked to the fireplace and dropped Karen's letter into the flames. I watched it burn, the careful handwriting turning to ash, and felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. Karen wanted forgiveness, but forgiveness had to be earned, not demanded. And some actions are simply unforgivable. Today Lily is 13 years old. She still has breathing problems and still sees Dr. Martinez for therapy, but she's grown into a remarkable young woman. She volunteers at a children's hospital, helps younger kids with their art projects, and has started speaking at events about bullying and community violence. I don't want other kids to go through what I did, she told me recently. But I also want them to know that even when really bad things happen, you can still have a good life afterward. Her wisdom amazes me every day. Somehow, this child who was nearly murdered by a neighbor has found a way to turn her trauma into purpose, her pain into compassion. As for me, I've learned that revenge isn't always about punishment or payback. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, raising your child to be strong and kind despite what the world has thrown at her. Karen Williams is serving her sentence in a maximum security prison 3 states away. She'll be eligible for parole when she's 67 years old if she lives that long. Her perfect house was foreclosed on, her career is over, and her family has disowned her. But none of that brings back the carefree little girl who used to run to the playground in sparkly pink sneakers. None of it erases the nightmares or fixes Lily's damaged lung or restores her complete trust in the world. The real victory isn't Karen's imprisonment, it's Lily's laughter, which has slowly returned over the years. It's her hand in mine as we walk to her new school, her excitement about her art projects, her plans to help other children who have been hurt. Karen took so much from us, but she didn't take everything. And in the end, that's the only revenge that truly matters.